Hey there, guys. Sorry for the little delay there. It is Sunday. It is Christy, and you're here for Weekend Winters. Hello! Apologies for that kind of awkwardness. I have, when I swap screens, it changes the number of options I have, and music was right down at the bottom. And so I had to scroll down awkwardly and get to it. How y'all doing today? Hello. Yes, so close to finishing your R2-D2, you can taste it. Oh, Flint, you're gonna definitely have to put pictures, up on the Twitters and stuff. And yeah, I know you meant R2-D2. I saw that. No worries. How are you guys doing? Oh, I forgot. I had it all set up as well. I got my face mask, so I don't actually have to broadcast from my face mask because I'm in my house. I'm in my house, and I wash everything that I get from the grocery store, and I wash all the surfaces, so I'm not bringing anything contagious into my house. But yeah, I wanted to showcase. Actually, it's fallen off my ear a little bit. It's built for a bigger face or a bigger nose, possibly. It's a little bit loose on me, but it was €9, which fair enough. People are working really hard on these, and there's a lot of demand. But it's a good face mask in that it both covers my nose all the way up here, goes all the way down well past my chin, which I think is the rule. I have to tuck it under my glasses or my glasses fog up. So it's kind of weird. I kind of have to wear it in about there. But now I feel ready to go to an Antifa protest. I don't know. I'm just going to broadcast from this for a little bit because of the novelty of it. In Germany, these are mandatory on public transport and shops in about 12 hours. 12 hours and less than 2 minutes. So I had to go out on Friday because the shops that sell them on the weekends are closed. They're shut on the weekends, and I went to the shop. Can I just chuck them in they're definitely reusable, and they're meant to be able to be disinfected, but I don't know that just putting them in the washing machine helps. I look like a bandit. Yeah. I don't know how to precisely disinfect them or how often I'm supposed to disinfect them. So I'll have to do a bit of research on that. It's also a bit hard to breathe, I'm going to be honest. I wouldn't want to exercise. I wouldn't want to run in these. I think I'd pass out if I had to run in these. But let's see. Yes. If I don't use the mask if you don't have to, it won't be effective for as long. I don't know what that meant. A flapper bandit? Hold them up. I'll get my Tommy gun out. So this is our new normal for the foreseeable future, I guess, on public transportation and in shops. We're supposed to be wearing these. I can show you guys a little bit. I know that Angela Merkel was out already finger-wagging at people, especially in our, I'm going to be honest, pretty promiscuous. Not promiscuous. Well, promiscuous in a lot of ways. Like, Cologne people are promiscuously friendly, I like to say. They're very un-German in that they'll just kind of be American. When German people ask about how are you doing, like they actually want to know. And Americans are like, just want to check in. Like, are you still breathing? And if you are, that's kind of enough. Like, how you doing? Yeah, I'm fine. Okay, let's move on. But yeah, if I start to run and then get practice with lesser air. But Merkel, she had this great. Is it called social distancing or conversation orgies? There's not a lot about Corona you can laugh about, but I did see this on an article last night. Was this the one I watched? I guess I could. Yes. All right. Well, I guess it was a couple days ago. Maybe it was FT? I don't think it was the FT. We'll go this one. I thought it was local DE. But, yes, thank you very much. Yes, we are starting to open up a little bit. And Merkel had this great slam of what people are doing. But basically, people are getting fed up of being indoors. I can see it. From this week, Wednesday, shops were able to open up a bit more. And in West Rhine-Pfalz, which is where I am, Phalia, they had the IKEA open. And that kind of like some people flipped out about this. So Merkel being one of them. So they're trying to, and I've noticed it too. I actually, I went out on Thursday. And I noticed that there were a lot more people out than I'd seen. I don't go out that often, but just even in my road, there was just more people out. It's getting to be in the 20s. That's like 70 degrees here. I think people are just fed up of being indoors all the time, which after 6 weeks, I totally get. But on the other hand, and my mic, yes, my mic has always worn a mask. Thank you, Flint. My pop filter, yes, has always been, it's always had a face mask on it. And so, I'll just read this out from citya.m. German Chancellor Angela Merkel today lashed out at discussion orgies taking place across the country as some shops open their doors for the first... Oh, wait, sorry, let me show you the screen. I'm sorry, I was so excited about all of the stuff here. Now you can't see anything. Now you can see it. Yeah, now you're not just looking at me, which is freaking boring. So sorry about that. It came as some German retailers, car and bicycle dealers, and bookshops reopened this morning under agreement reached with state leaders last week, but the Chancellor raised concerns that a slowdown in Germany's infection rate could be reversed due to lax social distancing. Many people went to parks during the warm weather over the weekend as lockdown measures were relaxed. Germany has the 5th highest number of COVID cases behind the US, Spain, Italy, and France, but its death toll is relatively low. It's now at 5,000. This is a couple days out of date, thanks to widespread testing. I don't know that it's low because of testing. I mean, I think the spread was contained because of the lockdown measures. I think the testing, I mean, it's not like testing is what's saving people's lives. The testing lets people know where the hotspots are to justify the social distancing that reduces the spread, which reduces the rate of death. I think that's the line of causality there. Under the new lockdown rules, retailers whose premises are under 800 square meters are allowed to reopen, but they must practice strict social distancing and hygiene rules. All Germans have been urged to wear face masks. With their use compulsory in some states, it marks the German government's efforts to limit the economic impact of the shutdown, without sparking a fresh wave of infections. And I want to get this. The local. I think this was the one I was looking at. I want to find this word because it's an absolutely hilarious looking word. It's yes. This is such a German word. You know how they do the compound nouns in German. And so when she talks about these discussion orgies opening, so what she's saying is that people are like having these almost like orgies about discussing opening up Germany again. And it's called Öffnungsdiskussion Orgien. I don't know how to do orgies. I'm going to be honest. I don't know how to say orgies in German, but I think it's I'll have to ask one of my patrons on that. And that, yeah. So, opening discussion orgies. I just, yeah. Who wrote this? This person is absolutely right. Rachel Loxton. It comes from one of these fantastically German habits of sticking words together to create a giant creation that foreigners struggle to say. So yeah, Öffnungsdiskussion Orgien or Orgien. All right, this is getting. I have to take it off now. I don't have to socially distance in my house. Happily for me. Yeah. So, fresh air. Yeah, it gets cozy in there, I have to say. It's too bad we weren't doing this back in December. It would have, I mean, other than the timetable, it's going to be very stifling in July wearing these around is what I'm going to say. But what she's saying is that we're not at the stage where we can return to normal. I know I saw in a different, she wrote, Merkel said, we're not in the final phase of this pandemic, we're just at the beginning. And I've got colleagues who are being, forced to go back into the offices. And I don't understand, and they don't have to. Like, I just don't understand why any employer would want to risk that. Apparently, Germany on the whole was at a rate of infection, they wanted to stay below 1. So a 1-to-1 means for every one person who has the infection, they pass it on to one other person, and that's the maximum. In Germany, because of the social distancing practices, I saw numbers where we had gotten down to 0.7 infections per person for a while, but after a couple days of these restrictions being lifted, that 0.7 had gone up to 0.9, and that was in part what Merkel was reacting to. We don't want to go back over 1. It's super hard, though. I mean, honestly, people are doing a pretty good job here of social distancing, and I get it. Like, just going outside and being in the park for a little bit, I think they're being super responsible. We can compare this to what's happening in Wisconsin, for instance, but you can definitely see that people here are really making an effort to stay far apart from each other, if I'm honest. We can compare this, if we want to I'm going to scroll down here. I'm pretty sure I've got some video here. I don't know if you guys saw the doofuses in my home state, Wisconsin. There are some real doofuses. Real choice Muppets, divs, people who have more money than sense. More most things than sense, if I'm honest. There's just so much nightmare stuff going on. And then I thought, by the way, that we talk a little bit about this and then maybe do a PragerU video. So, oh gosh, yeah, we've got whole kinds of stuff. Nicola Sturgeon talking about Trump. We've got, all kinds of stuff for the next happy hour. Absolutely. I've got so much stuff, you guys. But no, I can't find it. All right, I'll have to look it up here. In case you hadn't seen it. Madison, protests, COVID. Idiots. COVIDiots. Go to the video. Look at these complete morons. Now, this has got just the worst noise associated with it, so we definitely do not want to hear that. But compare the German people sitting. Look at these people. Look at them. Look at them. Look at these morons. I mean, you can say what you want about Germans, over exuberance and going outside, but look at the responsibility these people are doing in terms of making sure they stay at least 1.5 meters away from somebody. In comparison, you have one person. Imagine one person who's a asymptomatic viral shedder. Just exhaling, whatever, shaking hands with people, patting them on the back, giving them hugs, handing stuff out, handing people things. One asymptomatic virus shedder, wandering around this location for 3 or 4 hours during the course of the protest. Imagine what they could do in terms of infection spread. Now, if you guys, I said this on Twitter, but I guess it's worth saying because you guys don't always get everything I tweet. 19 cases of COVID that I saw, at least. Maybe there's an update. Milwaukee election. Now, I'm not sure exactly. Oh my gosh, 40 now. It went from 19 to 40. Okay, so what is this saying here? 40, yeah. These people were socially distancing. These people came in masks, right? So when the Democrats turned up to vote during the middle of a pandemic, the pictures I saw were that people were taking it seriously. People had masks. Even if they didn't have masks, they were socially distancing. Lines stretched literally for miles in order for people to wait to vote because of the measures they were taking. And even with all of this precaution, even with people who were being responsible, this was April 24th that these 40 cases have been counted. The election was April 9th, right? April 7th. Thank you, local paper. So we are more than 3 weeks out of this election, and we're now seeing 40 cases that are linked to the Wisconsin election from social distancing and being responsible, which, considering how contagious that virus is probably, it could have been so much worse if people had not done social distancing and worn masks and gloves and things. 40 cases, 3.5 weeks later. So what are we going to see because of these numpties? What kind of hotspots are going to build up because of this? And Flint is right. I hear these moron... sorry, who was saying? Yep, it's a shame they will affect innocent people other than these twats. Absolutely. I mean, that's it. They're going to go home. They're going to see their kids, maybe, or their family, the other people they live with, who are not at all responsible for this. They might have a friend that they see who works in a nursing home, and then it's going to be spread there because of this. I don't understand these ideas of fighting for the freedom to die of a horrible disease. I don't get it. I don't get it at all. And yes, the protests are funded and organized by Betsy DeVos. Yes, that's also the case. So when it comes to the funding of the protests, we can actually look that up because there are people who are tracking it. Like funding Corona protest. Yeah. Here we go from the 17th. A group linked to Betsy DeVos is, yes, I accept, thank you very much, is trying to organize. Sure. Indiana citizens against excessive quarantine. Sorry, what is excessive quarantine? Just the name itself. Quarantine means being cut off. It means so if you either you are in quarantine, this lockdown is different from quarantine, right? A lockdown, you can still go outside and shop. And people are still allowed to go out and shop and get essentials. And if they are an essential, if you are quarantined, you're not allowed to go out. So what's an excessive quarantine? People don't understand what words mean. And what they have here, they are drawn militia groups. Come on, where's the funding? I don't see where they're actually saying where it's funded. Where did I miss it? Here we go. Wow, that's way, way far down in the article. Organized by the Michigan Conservative Coalition and the Michigan Freedom Fund, the protest has drawn criticism over its link to the Betsy DeVos family. I think it's inappropriate for a sitting member of the United States cabinet to be waging political attacks on any governor. Yeah, fair. I don't understand the logic of this. Fox News is giving information that's going to kill its own viewers. If you think about how the market is meant to be rational and market forces are meant to encourage the best behavior out of people, that's clearly not the case, because Fox News has directly... Did you see the study? Now, I started to look into this, and it is honestly, it's a rigorously done study from the point of view of the statistical methods applied. Did you see the study that people who watch Sean Hannity are more likely to die than people who watch Tucker Carlson? Get hands up. Okay, this is crazy to me. But Carlson, Sean Hannity, more likely to die. I think now currently it's a working paper. And what does a working paper mean? A working paper means that they basically are ready to submit it for peer review. Anytime you have a working paper, it might be the basis of like a conference presentation or another kind of public presentation. So when you have a working paper, it is not peer reviewed. However, it's in a state where the author feels like it is ready to be in some ways engaged with and critiqued by the wider community. And it's kind of like a preview, I'm not done yet, maybe a few suggestions. And then what happens normally is people will read it and they'll give feedback. Like if you're giving a conference paper, people are like, oh, have you run this test? Have you looked at this database? Have you considered this? And it's kind of like, a chance to test out objections, concerns, other ways of looking at the data to make sure you're not drawing false conclusions or bad conclusions, or at least that you're being as rigorous as you possibly can with your methods to be conservative, with your claims. So, hey, Rory Katz, how's you? Are you up really early or up really late? All right, so before we go on to this study, let's see what you guys are saying in the chatsies. Hand washing with soap will kill COVID, just like the hand washing. So yes, it is, by the way, for those of you who don't know, it is the detergent in the soap that attacks the fat, the lipids that surround the virus, just like breaking down fat if you cook eggs or something in oil. When you put the soap on, it reacts against the fat and it starts to break it down. So by putting detergent up against the virus, it breaks down its lipid cell body outside, and then the virus just sort of all the internal stuff, the mechanics that help itself replicate and survive, just sort of float harmlessly away. So yes, just soap. You don't need a special kind of thing, just normal soap. Just make sure you get your hands nice and lathery. Glad to see my mic was wearing a mask. What do you got here? The good thing about face masks being normalized is I will be able to walk out with this soon. What is this? Now remember, Sunday shows are my clean show, so no naughty stuff. Oh my god. Wow. Yeah, you know what? You won't even get looks with this. Who said that? Lucky Wanderer. Yeah, you can go out with this and people are like, damn. I want to get one of those. That's a nice upgrade. Sadly. Oh, by the way, I did see the official notice that the T-Rex full body costumes not effective in preventing viral transmissions. So you have to put on a face mask onto your T-Rex. All right, what else do you guys have to say? People in Sweden are kind of naive and still going out and hanging out. Masks are rare AF. All right, so there wasn't, again, we talked about the idea of natural experiments, all right, in that we can't, during a pandemic, actually conduct real scientific experiments on people in countries, right? We can't say, okay, Denmark, you institute this policy, and Belgium, you institute that policy. Sorry, I got slightly running nose, so I want to make sure. And force people to risk themselves at risk. We can't do that. There's a lot of times that we can't as scientists. Elections. As a political scientist, I would love to run multiple elections in different scenarios, but that's not how it works. So we always have to think about how we can do experiments naturally based on the information that already. I'm sorry, my nose still tickles. Sorry, I'll go off camera. Yeah. I got all flustered when the Nordic countries, I think the best way to do this is the FT. I think we talked a little bit about this on the happy hour, if you guys remember. So if you've seen that, you might know where I'm going with this. But as the countries each made their own individual policies, some countries went lockdown very early, like at the first death, or even sometimes I think right before the first death. A classic example of this in the United States. So New York now traces its coronavirus infection to flights coming in from Europe, possibly Italy, in January and February, not from China. Okay, so we had in California a case where early on, the governor and local officials took very strict measures and were able to lock down before the spread had really gotten bad. But in New York, they had tons of people coming in from Europe, tons of people coming over from Italy. And it was those Italian holidaymakers I know in Germany that they linked to people going to Germany, from Germany to Italy, coming back and bringing the virus with them. And if people were, exposed in Europe and coming back to New York, it explains why there was just such an explosive, the density of people, as well as the fact that they just had, I think, a lot of flights now carrying COVID-19 positive passengers. So as it spread throughout Europe, different countries, it spread throughout the world, different countries take different approaches to how to do their policies. And we see that in countries that took on social distancing very early, that had a real payoff in terms of a very low rate of spread and infection and deaths. Whereas the countries that took more of a, well, one, delayed, where there was just wildfire spread and they delayed, they had a lockdown, but it kind of came after that big spread had happened. And I would count Italy and Spain in that situation where it was already spreading under their noses before they really got a handle on it. And as a consequence, they had to do a really hard lockdown in order to bring these numbers down. Same with Spain, same with France. UK also, they actually did a worse job because they did nothing for a couple weeks. They were going to go the whole herd mentality approach. And as you can see here, I mean, Italy had a terrible time, really terrible time. The UK did worse than Italy, even though they knew it was coming. And that's a directly linked to the Johnson government and its irresponsible policies of going for herd immunity as a first option and then changing their minds later on. I also don't think these UK numbers are accurate. I think they're underestimating the deaths because we know there's been problems with underreporting nursing home fatalities when it comes to COVID deaths. So I would not be surprised if this number was adjusted upwards slightly. I mean, nowhere near where the US is. The US is in a class on its own. But we were looking at Denmark. No, actually, you know what? A better way to compare this, I think. Because I don't know if they have. Oh, yeah. Do they have? Yeah, actually, sorry. Coronavirus live updates. This is better. Sorry, I'm going to keep doing. All right. Excessive quarantine is being slightly pregnant. Yes, you either are or you aren't. Well said. Who said that? Oh, you guys are funny. All right, let's take a look at European countries because I know they now have these by region as well. So we're going to look at yesterday's numbers out of Europe only, and we'll look at new cases as the category here. So natural experiment, I am trying to do multiple things at once. Sorry. Natural experiment, different countries adopt different policies, and we look to see the effects later on because we assume that the spread is pretty much the same. How it spreads between people doesn't change. So the conditions under which it spreads are the things that are the experiment. It is the dependent variable. It's a thing that changes. And Sweden decided to go with a sort of a social distancing light where it was not a proper lockdown. They decided to, as you were saying, have restaurants be slightly open and people not wearing masks. Well, as you can see here, Sweden has now 18,000 total cases. They have 2,000 deaths as of yesterday. And in terms of their peer group, they're usually ranked alongside Denmark, which did do a strict social distancing. Who else? Norway, I guess we can look at. So first, let's look at who comes up first. Denmark. Stronger social distancing. Sweden, almost less than half of the number of cases. Sweden here, fatality-wise, 2,000 deaths so far with their social distancing light approach. And you can see here 2,192. Denmark, 418. That's a huge difference. Finland, similar situation. Oh, I thought it was a mosquito. Wasn't it a mosquito? Similar situation, 4,000 cases. Not that far off. Okay, so like half as many as Denmark. What is that? Like not even a quarter. I don't want to do math in public. 186 deaths. So when you look at where's Norway? Yeah, 7,000 cases, 200 deaths. So when you look at the government policies saved lives or killed people. They saved lives or killed people. And I know that we don't know the economic fallout of all of this yet. But yeah, what we do know is that social distancing is currently the best way we have to save lives. And so doing social distancing light, it it will just increase the fatalities. And also there's something else. I know I don't want to do a whole COVID episode, but we started on this path. I saw recent reporting about its tendency to create clots. So one other kind of weird factor about COVID is that there's something it does related to interaction with blood cells or things in the blood. And for some people, they've seen way more pulmonary pulmonary embolism, I think it's called, a cardiac clot or a stroke. People in their 30s, people in their 40s who should not be having these problems. So there's a lot of stuff we don't know about COVID yet, and the only tool we have to try to stop the spread is social distancing. All right. For someone who does quantitative statistics, I would never have thought I would I don't want to do maths in public said so often. Well, there's a difference between understanding the logic of a statistical method and plugging it into a computer that does all the formula for you with a preset data set and understanding the logic of what it's doing and being able to interpret the output. And that's, to me, very different from doing calculations on the fly. So I understand I don't have all the wording to hand right now because I'd need to look at my notes. But when it comes to a logistic regression, I understand we're dealing with odds ratios and the probabilities of things and how to describe an increase or a decrease in the ratio. And also the problem of dealing with the law of logistic regression coefficients, because the negative coefficients can only have a lower range than the higher ones. So it's all very difficult, but being good at interpreting statistics or even running statistical analysis doesn't mean I feel confident doing math in public. So, catching up with Italy. Oh, no. You guys are surpassed Italy. You guys are you're over Italy. So, hey, Flint. Yeah, it is completely, for me, I understand that people have sympathy for Boris Johnson, but I don't see why they should. Honestly, because his policies almost got himself killed, and it's getting other people. So if somebody was a drunk driver and they crashed into a bus and they ended up in a hospital because they crashed their car into a bus and a bunch of passengers died, would you feel sorry for the driver? I understand they're hurt and they're in hospital, but they also caused the freaking crash by driving drunk. So why are you throwing sympathy their way when people die because of them? And that's how I feel about Boris Johnson. I do not get why people feel bad for him. I guess, he's because they saw he survived and he's a person and he's a face and he's a leader and it's all covered on the news. But frankly, I don't think he deserves as much pity as he's getting, and he certainly should not be viewed as competent on this issue. How can he be viewed as competent? He's got the worst death rate in Europe by far, and they're the UK stuff started after. It took enough time for a move up from Italy and actually get to the UK and spread around. So yeah, the UK is going to have, even though it had plenty of warning and it's an island, it's going to have the higher death rate, which is just phenomenal to me. It just shows the incompetence of these sort of conservative approaches. And hey, all the Americans I know have learnt how to do stats by hand. Aussies get taught stats using RStudio. No pen and paper for us. I know that I think for people who are statisticians, like the lucky wanderer, I think for people who are statisticians, they want everyone to be able to do the calculations, right? But in my opinion, I had 20 weeks, and I had to get people from descriptive statistics to time series analysis in 10 lectures, all right? I don't have time in 10 lectures to get people to do by hand calculations on ordinary least squares, total error sums, and all of that. I mean, it was hard enough to get through all the things that you have to know just to interpret a table before you even start to do anything else. So it was also a function of the fact that I had 10 weeks or did I have 20 weeks? I can't even remember now. I think I have 10 weeks, but it might have been 20. I don't know. Well, I taught 2 courses. One had qual first and then quants, but then I started teaching, I think those 2 separate courses, so we had more time. But still, it was only 20 hours of lecture, and then 20 hours in the labs where they had to be practicing stuff. So no, I don't. We didn't have time. I mean, that being said, I did explain the calculations of a chi-square. We did go through to how we figure out the estimates of a chi-square to determine whether or not a test is statistically significant, on a crosstabs in this case, and to what p-level of statistical significance and why. But other than that, I really didn't go into the deep part of it. I just went into the logic because our tests for quantitative research methods weren't on how do you calculate a chi-square. It was, here you're reading a professionally written article and it's using logistic regression. What do these coefficients mean? What does the fact that a coefficient is positive or negative mean? What is statistical that was way more important to master and correctly interpreting the results of a regression analysis than all the maths that went into it. Anyway, how did I get? Any tips for a layperson on how to spot bogus statistics and statistical manipulation? Sorry, I went off on a whole quants thing. Sorry. Yeah, no, DNFN, you're not too dumb for complicated stuff like statistics. The thing is that, this is why I think my students really liked me, is because I didn't teach quantitative research methods like a stats course, like a maths course, like a calculation course. I taught it like a language course. Because if you understand the logic of a formula, if you understand the phrases, what they represent, and what the value system is of that language, then you can speak that language perfectly fluently without knowing anything about the actual formulas behind it. I mean, it helps, but in terms of just reading an article, interpreting it, you can do that. You can do some preliminary statistics and know why you're running a test and what it's testing for and how to interpret it. Right? That kind of fluency. So in terms of a good study, I don't really, when I look at a study, I can't like look at a table and know that it's crap. So normally it has to do with the methodology. So since this is an easy one for me to fill the time on, Flint, since you asked. When I'm approaching a piece of work, I look for a couple things. First, you can generally read a well-written abstract should tell you what their question is, what the answer was, why you should believe them in terms of like the methods that they use, and why you should care, where it fits into the body of existing literature, or what new contribution, or what new refutation does it make. You should get that in the abstract. And things that I look for are so if it summarizes all in the abstract, you can already start to look at, for instance, what is the sample size and how was it selected? If they're trying to generalize about a wider population, like we look at attitudes from conservative and liberal voters, right? But their sample size is 50, that's not very good. If they have a sample size of at least 250, you need about 250 to run a kind of regression analysis to make generalizations. And then the question is, who is the population? Just wondering if I smell smoke. I don't think so. People could be barbecuing. That could definitely, it is a gorgeous day outside. People could be on the barbecue. That's a very big possibility. If I keep smelling smoke, I'll take a break and go check it out. So if it's some sort of random sample, it needs to be an internet telephone mixed kind of base thing. All online panels are a little bit more dodgy, but they're getting better. And the reason why online panels can sometimes be questionable is because there's a pre-selection of the kinds of people who actually go online. So there are certain demographical groups or demographics that they just don't go online because they might have financial barriers, or for whatever reason, they don't get online. And then the question becomes, no, I'm definitely smelling smoke. I gotta go check this out. Like my smoke alarm's not going off. I don't think anything is on fire, but I do want to check it out because it's really distracting. So looking for a good sample distribution, a minimum case of 250. 250 to 1,000 to 2,000 is a pretty good sample size. You don't need a sample size of 5,000. Sampling doesn't get better the more people you have. There's a sort of a range of efficiency, and then you're just getting a really low margin of error, but unless you do a census, you'll never have a zero margin of error. Don't burn down. And so good sample size, a good a good selection. And then also, are they kind of limiting their claims, or are they making broad claims or pretty narrow claims? And does it fit within what we know already, or does it kind of go against it? So, yeah. All right. Hard to get a big sample on people with one hash joint. All right, it is 40 minutes. Okay, I'm going to go reheat my coffee, figure out what the hell smells like smoke. And you guys can listen to some jazz music, or not jazz music, blues. I guess it's technically blues. So I'm going to pull that up, and because it's just always running underneath. And be back in 5. No, it's all good. No fire. I warmed up my coffee. So we're all set. Okay, to continue on Flint, if it's an experimental study, if they brought people in and gave them stimuli and gave other people not stimuli and then looked at the differences between the two groups, I never take a one-off experimental study as truth. For me, because experimental studies are experimental, they're not as easily generalizable. So the way that you verify, in my opinion, experimental studies is repeated experimentation. It's not their fault, but a lot of experimental studies rely on undergraduate student participation because psychologists don't have a lot of money to throw at participants. You have a pretty limited budget. Let's say you have a $500 experiment budget. You can get 100 people at $5 or, 5 people at $100. You kind of have to make do. But the caution is, if you do most of your studies with under 25 skewed young, skewed affluent, skewed white participants, it's really difficult to generalize experiments conducted on 25-year-olds to people in their 60s, So that's why experiments to me are never as definitive as, say, like a census-based study or a really good longitudinal time series analysis with 40 observations based on, a representative sample. So that's also it. So this, I was like, me? The whole viewers of Sean Hannity are more likely to die from COVID than people who watch Tucker Carlson. We know that Tucker Carlson is full of crap. He was also Tucker Carlson is no angel. He was pushing the nonsense hydrochloroquine solution that ended up actually killing people, not helping them. So a new study from the University of Chicago's Becker-Friedman Institute for Economics found that a greater viewership of Hannity relative to Tucker Carlson Tonight was associated with a greater number of COVID-19 deaths and cases in the early stages of the pandemic. So we have a look at this, because for me, okay, here are the questions I immediately have. How do you know what people are watching? Right? You're going to have to, you're going to ask people about their viewing habits? So let's have a look at what this paper is. And as you can say, it is a working paper, I mentioned before. A working paper is not peer-reviewed. It's not gone through the process, but it is in a stage where the authors feel like it's ready to be engaged with and critiqued by the wider public. So let's see what they have to say here. For first, there's it's called Misinformation During a Pandemic. It's got 4 authors. Yes, I'm going to just say call them by their first name: Leonardo, Akash, Christopher, and David. And these are the people collaborating. I have no idea what their backgrounds are because I don't have it listed here. Right, so they write, we study the effects of news coverage on the novel coronavirus by the 2 most widely viewed cable news shows in the United States, Hannity and Tucker Carlson Tonight, both on Fox News, on viewers' behavior and downstream health outcomes. Carlson warned viewers about the threat posed by the coronavirus from early February, while Hannity originally dismissed the risks associated with the virus before gradually adjusting his position starting late February. We validate these differences in content with independent coding of show transcripts. Okay, that's good. All right, so the first thing they have to do to establish their claims. All right, so what they're saying is that 2 hosts gave different messages to their audiences, and we want to link up a causal relationship between different messages and different outcomes. Well, the first thing they have to do is establish there were actually different messages, right? So that's the first part of their paper. So this is rigorously correct in terms of like following rigor. Sorry. All right, so that I would take completely believable. If you show coding, how you coded it and where you coded it, and you have open data and you explain how your coding was structured, that is pretty easy to establish as a claim. So, in line with the differences in content we present, novel survey evidence that Hannity's viewers changed behavior in response to the virus later than other Fox viewers, while Carlson's viewers changed their behavior earlier. We then turn to the effects on the pandemic itself, examining health outcomes across counties. First, we document that greater viewership of Hannity relative to Tucker Carlson Tonight is strongly associated with a greater number of COVID-19 cases and deaths in the early stages of the pandemic. The word associated here is important. Statistically, associations aren't causal. You're talking, when I see the word strongly associated, I'm reading like crosstabs and descriptive statistics. The difference between a descriptive statistic and an inferential one is a descriptive statistic describes the reality we see, and an inferential statistics allows us to draw inferences about the relationship between variables in that model. So here they're just saying if they're going up, they're associated. That's like saying ice cream consumption is associated with hot weather patterns. That when there's more hot water, there's more hot water. When there's more hot weather, there's more ice cream consumption. Now, we're not saying that heat causes ice cream consumption. In that case, what we're saying is we find these 2 things together. And there might be a relation, but there might be something else going on as well. For instance, people might have more opportunities to buy ice cream in the summer because that's when the ice cream trucks go out. All right? So there's not only the opportunity to have it in the summer, or is not only eating it in the summer, but there are more opportunities to be reminded of ice cream. That also may be a reason why ice cream consumption could go up. I don't know these statistics. I'm just giving you how things can be spuriously correlated. Or it could be something completely different. Who knows? All right. The relationship is stable across an expansive set of robustness tests. Okay, so they were like, hey, are we full of crap here? Well, we can do this test to try to prove ourselves wrong. We can do this test to try to prove ourselves wrong, or our theory wrong. Let's throw things at our hypothesized relationship that it would fall down on its face if we were wrong. That's what science tries to do. To better identify the effect of differential viewership of the two shows, we employ a novel instrument variable strategy, exploiting variation when the shows are broadcast in relation to local sunset time. What? What? This is interesting. I need to read that sentence again. To better identify the effect of differential viewership of the two shows, we employ a novel instrumental variable strategy, exploiting variation in when shows are broadcast in relation to local sunset time. These estimates also show that greater exposure to Hannity relative to Tucker Carlson tonight is associated with a greater number of county-level cases and deaths. Furthermore, the results suggest that in mid-March, after Hannity's shift in tone, the diverging trajectories on COVID-19 cases begin to revert. We provide additional evidence consistent with the misinformation being an important mechanism driving the effects in the data. While our findings cannot yet speak to the long-term effects, they indicate that provision of misinformation in the early stages of a pandemic can have important consequences for how a disease ultimately affects the population. All right, so there's things in here I want to point out that actually give me some confidence that this isn't full of crap. All right, so they have a very clear association they want to test. They think these two shows had two different messages, and they both have their kind of unique viewerships, and that they want to test whether or not the viewership content is trackable in terms of code cases. So they first code the content of the shows to determine that there's actually a qualitative difference between the kinds of content people were exposed to. Then they find this county effects level to see, which is probably a data set based on viewership, like who watches and what demos and stuff, which is publicly available. And then they triangulate that at the county level with these cases. And then importantly, this is important, not only do they show, which I'm assuming this was what happens, not only do they show that there is a statistically noticeable, valid difference, not just random error, not just chance, but actual statistical difference in the spreads in these two counties when the messages are different. And then, interestingly, they say, not Hannity. Yeah, Hannity changed his message, and when his message became closer to Tucker Carlson's, then his audience's COVID exposure rates became closer to Tucker Carlson's as well. That's pretty powerful, because on its own, just showing two different messages, showing two different outcomes is interesting, but it's not conclusive. But if you can do a time-lagged kind of thing where you show, okay, here's Hannity's message, anti-COVID, 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 and then all of a sudden pro-social distancing, and then what you see is that there's a pattern that follows, that there's higher rates, and then a couple weeks after he changes his message, you see, without any other controls, a change in the population, then there's a more interesting, more powerful argument being made there. So being able to account for change, not only describe the situation, but account for changing attitudes by a lagged measure that shows the content changed, then the behavior changed, and then the outcome changed. I'm sorry if this is this. I find this really exciting and interesting. I'm so tempted to look at. I have looked at this. The paper is huge. I looked ahead about. Look at it. It's 90 pages long. So no, we're not going to cover this on this show. I did have a little bit of a look through, and I'm going to say it's pretty compelling. There are some really good data here. There's some, they're very self-rigorous. I think that's the thing that impressed me the most is, and they're economists. So of course they have this need to prove themselves and feel validated and smarter. And, no, I just being an economist, I think, is always feeling inadequate. I mean, that's basically every PhD that's ever happened, but it's, we got your regression, model here. It's a log. Is it a log outcome? Yeah. And they go through all of the details in a very econometrics kind of way. There's a lot of quant speak, there's a lot of statistical analysis that if you do spend time and want to know exactly the formulas that they created or the ones that they used in order to make all their estimates, they're completely transparent, so that you know exactly if you want to, if you can find a typo in the formula, like you will get noticed as an official correction in the journal. And I've got the references here, but they've got some really good charts as well, where you've got their viewership stuff and everything else. So this is a 90 pages, and starting, what is this? Their charts start, their graphics start on page 26. They've already done their references, right? So you get to page 26, and then page 26 just downwards is all of them like bring in receipts. Like, this is what we looked at, this is how we did it, this is what we saw, here's this version of it, here's that version of it, here it is as a bar chart, here it is as a scatter plot, here it is on the estimates, here's the margin of error, here's the actual coefficients, here are all the little notes we have inside underneath the coefficients, and here's a supplementary appendix, just so you have more information. I mean, this is, I'm really glad I don't have to review this. You get paid as a reviewer for this kind of, I don't know what they do in economy. We don't do 90 pages articles, at least not in my field. Where I do qual stuff, we have word limits and things. But so that I will be looking to see if that gets a peer review mention. Again, on first glance, I was pretty impressed with it. I think there was one time when I was asked to review something that was just so already professionally done. I mean, it was clear to me. I think was it BJPS or was it political studies? I was doing, I can't remember. No, it was a different one. But anyway, I read through it and I was just like, I literally have nothing else to contribute. I mean, I think this is clearly, they had tons of peer review and rejections, and they're coming to us and they've already had everything thrown at them. And the editor of the journal just said, look, if you think it's accept without changes, just say it, because it's one less thing for me to deal with. But generally you get to revise and resubmit. So, okay. I'm all kinds of thrown off because there was no fire, by the way, obviously, otherwise I wouldn't be here. But it's also made me feel like I should be closer to the end of the show. So, all right, let's just do let's be stupid. Let's get away from coronavirus. I think I've answered all of the questions, or at least ones that before getting distracted. Most economists that are honest simply say no one knows how the economy works at all. Yeah, that's completely true. I think for me, I guess economists, like people who do stats in economy, probably, if you like numbers, you feel very comfortable in them and confident in them. But to me, it is. Economics is a social science. It's not a hard science. It's not a physical science. It's a behavioral science. And I know they try to dress it up with a lot of formula, and of course they're looking at money and stats, and so it's easy to quantify everything. But ultimately, economics is about human psychology and human behavior. So, of course, we don't understand ourselves as a species. So we're never going to understand, the same way we don't understand like how we get election results. There are a lot of different people doing a lot of different things, a lot of moving parts that produce an aggregated outcome. And then we try to find the bits that we think explain the most, but it's just fitting models. It's not perfect understanding. Why are you guys talking about chicken salad? What's going on in this chat? There's chicken salad with mayo and 7-Eleven for a chicken salad sandwich. Oh, you want to go out for a chicken salad sandwich? Yes, I get that. All right, so should we go have some dumb time with PragerU? That's what I thought we would do as a distraction. And then I have a show with my patrons in like 5 more hours. So probably after the PragerU video, gonna call it a day. Gonna have a special appearance by Kevin Logan at the happy hour patron thing. I think we're gonna do some pub quiz stuff just to be a bit social and have a bit of a chat. Cough at you. That's why psychologists do a lot of cross collaboration with economists. Yeah. Ultimately, it's about human psychology. And that's why, I mean, I understand that legally, in a lot of ways, capitalism, like its legal structure and how it works, has deleterious effects on how people live. I think my biggest critique of some anti-capitalism rhetoric is that it somehow assumes people are compassionate and interested in equality and are willing to make sacrifices for the greater good. Like, oh yeah, if we could just get away from capitalism, then workers will all come together and we'll just magically agree. The workers will always agree on how a business should be run. And there won't be any internal problems when you just give random people you hired an opinion on your business strategy. I just think that the whole thing about communism tends to ignore the human psychology elements of it. I think it's pretty unrealistic. Just like with anarchism, like just the idea that people would want to go to meetings and try to come to a group consensus about, composting regulations. No. Just no. I hire people with my taxes to deal with that stuff so I don't have to. So I can get on with my life, being lazy, doing things like this. So I don't have to participate in a bunch of meetings with, yabos who are gonna be the one holdout while everyone else has their afternoons ruined. Sorry. So, let's talk about Prager. Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that may be. I'll have a flash from the 90s for you people. All right, I was thinking about either what was revolutionary about the American Revolution, honestly, or the Intolerance of Tolerance. I was thinking that one. You guys have the truth about Canadian healthcare I can't do. I'd need a Canuck. I would need a Canuck. The bravery deficit should be pretty entertaining when it comes out, but it's not due out till tomorrow or something. I don't feel like how to end white privilege. Oh man. So are you guys okay with the tolerance of intolerance? I'm gonna give you a little bit on the, unless someone shouts out something. I'm not giving you many opportunities to look at the headlines, so we're just gonna go with it, I guess. I sort of solicited your opinion, and then on reflection I realized I don't care. No, it's not I don't care, I just need to get going. Alright, so first thing I'm gonna have to do is turn on the sound. The next thing I'm going to have to do is get on my headphones so I can hear the sound. You're here for the Canadian healthcare, Rory Katz. Well, I don't know if there's a lag, so sadly, we won't be able to do that in real time. That would be a video that would take forever. All right, let's, we'll put closed captioning on. Why not? We'll also do the playback speed a little bit faster just to mess with the copyright gods. Flint is giving Rory Katz burger and chicken. Okay, so let's.
Do you know what the word tolerance means?
Okay, here we go. When is this from, I wonder? We watched this one? I don't think I've watched this one. March 16th, 2020. Definitely not watched it. All right.
If you do, I salute you because I have no idea anymore.
All right, can we just before we even start, let's do some counter programming. Popper, tolerance paradox. Yep. You guys have I heard of this. I learned of it. I've had the idea, but in terms of the actual formulation, I wasn't aware Popper had sort of described it. So before we start on this, let's talk about the paradox of tolerance. Now, Karl Popper was someone who, again, in terms of philosophy, I admire a lot. He is the person who articulated the idea of the null hypothesis, falsification. Popper was studying at the time of the Vienna Circle, the logical positivists, and their ideas, their concern, I should say, was how do we know it's true? Why do we distinguish claims that are more metaphysical from things that are verifiable. And you can go into like extreme logical positivism if you want. You can go down that rabbit hole. But Popper, in that milieu, was thinking about these things, living at the same time as Einstein and Freud and Marx, where their ideas, well, I don't know if Marx and Freud were alive, but their ideas were very popular. And he noticed that one way to separate out a Freudian or a Marxian theory, Marxist theory, is he noticed that Marxism and Freud, whatever the outcome, a person could retrofit an explanation onto it to explain why it was Marxist, or why it was Freudian, or how Adler would explain it. In contrast, when Einstein made his prediction that gravity is so powerful it can even bend light, people are like, what? And like, no, seriously, dude, I'm telling you. Like, if you think about it, Einstein, this is me being Einstein, you think about it, how it sort of like pulls all space towards it, it should pull light as well. And people are like, oh man, that's crap. So he had this prediction, like, if you were able to capture a light, and block out a gravitational pull, you should see the light showing up in a different area. The Eddington expedition down to the Antarctic, one of the poles. They took a picture before an eclipse of a star, and then they took a picture where it was the light from the star was near the sun. And then during the eclipse, they took a picture of it again where they could see the star, and you could see when it got closer to the sun, it actually looked like the star moved. So we had a risky prediction from Einstein that he said, hey, if I'm right, the world should look like this. If my theory about the world is correct, it should look like this. And if I'm wrong, it'll look like that. There's no in between. I'm either right or I'm wrong. And Popper was very taken with this idea. Popper thought that this was a really good way of keeping ourselves honest, because we tend to have confirmation bias. And the problem with Marx and the problem with Freud is that people will look for things and then explain how they fit, as opposed to being rigorous. So by assuming a position where I'm going to assume my theory is wrong and then look at the evidence, and if the evidence is such that I have to reject the idea that my theory isn't explaining something, I then have to explain it. So you start with a null hypothesis of no effect or no cause or no relationship, and then you run the tests, and if the data tell you, no, seriously, there's a relationship, you go, okay, I can reject the null hypothesis, and then I have to, by logic, accept the alternative. So I know I'm off on a tangent again, but like Popper was a good thinker. Like he was a rigorous thinker. Cared about this stuff. And so these are his opinions. It's not God, but it's worthy of consideration. I think we should extend him some charity because he has a pretty good record of being a rigorous thinker, and see what he has to say. So Popper described it as a seemingly paradoxical idea that in order to maintain a tolerant society, the society must be intolerant of intolerance. The paradox of intolerance is an important concept for thinking about which boundaries can or should be set. Honestly, let's map this onto coronavirus protests. In order to maintain our democracy and our way of life, we have to temporarily stop, approving of public protests. I personally think it's irresponsible to have public protests in a pre-COVID kind of way, because you're going to kill people. Right? So in order to preserve our democracy for the long term, we need to restrict, I think, personally, some of these interpersonal mass actions to maintain our society. And in the same way, it's the same logic applied, but to tolerance. So he writes in The Open Society and Its Enemies in 1945. Less well known is the paradox of tolerance. Unlimited tolerance must lead to the disappearance of tolerance. If we extend unlimited tolerance even to those who are intolerant, if we are not prepared to defend a tolerant society against the onslaught of the intolerant, then the tolerant will be destroyed, and tolerance with them. In this formulation, I do not imply, for instance, that we should always suppress the utterance of intolerant philosophies, as long as we can counter them by rational argument and keep them in check by public opinion. Suppression would certainly be unwise. but we should claim the right to suppress them if necessary, even by force. For it may turn out that they are not prepared to meet us on the level of rational argument, but begin by denouncing all argument. They may forbid their followers to listen to rational argument, because it is deceptive, and teach them to answer arguments by the use of their fists or pistols. You know, the people who show up to these protests about quarantine with long guns and AR-15s, they're not interested in arguments, are they? They're interested in a show of force. We should therefore claim, Papa writes, in the name of tolerance, the right to not tolerate the intolerant. If we allow fascist ideas to spread, it will undermine our democracy and our rights of freedom of speech, and ultimately, by tolerating fascists and letting it go unchecked, we will lose the rights we are allowing them to enjoy, is the shorthand for it. Let's see what, now Rawls, another important thinker. We'll just see what Rawls said and then we'll move on. And then Thomas Jefferson too, slaveholder. But a founding father. Will look to see what he had to say. 1971 philosopher John Rawls concluded a theory of justice that a just society must tolerate the intolerant, for otherwise that society would then itself be intolerant and thus unjust. However, Rawls also insists, like Popper, that a society has a reasonable right of self-preservation against acts of intolerance that supersedes the principle of intolerance. And this is it. It's not like we're trying to wipe, like right think everybody. It's about, I guess, the scope and the shows of force associated with it. So while an intolerant sect does not itself have title to complain of intolerance, its freedom should be restricted only when the tolerant society sincerely and with reason believe that their own security and that of the institutions of liberty are in danger. Kind of like the way white supremacists walk into buildings and just shoot people, or go after federal buildings like Timothy McVeigh, right? And just to go down here, what do we have to say for Thomas Jefferson? Thomas Jefferson had already addressed the notion of a tolerant society in his first inaugural speech concerning those who might destabilize the United States and its unity, saying, quote, "Let them stand undisturbed as monuments of the safety with which error of opinion may be tolerated where reason is left free to combat." I don't know what that is. Basically, what does it say? Michael Waltz, should we tolerate the intolerant? He claims most minority religious groups who are the beneficiaries of tolerance are themselves intolerant, at least in some respects. In a tolerant regime, such intolerant people may learn to be tolerant, or at least behave, if they possess this virtue. Such behavioral modification may be effected without clearly knowing intentions of such people, and by using a forgiving but provocable nice guy strategy. All right, so basically what we're saying here is it's in order to preserve a society which has diversity of opinions, you can't tolerate big movements that by people who are intolerant and oppress other people's opinions. So I think it's good to have that framework before we move on. All right? They should not be so intolerant as to outlaw nightly catfights, says Roy Katz. Hence deplatforming bigots. Yeah, I mean, if you look at like the way Milo targeted a trans student at UW Milwaukee, that's a completely, I think, appropriate way to cut him off from a stage ever again, saying you're actually abusing your freedom of speech rights by making someone else physically unsafe. And we can't tolerate that kind of actions because it's leading to a public safety risk. And you're causing like more harm. So, all right. So again, with that background, let's have a look to watch these white guys complain that they can't be complete and total bigots. Is that? Oh, it's super, super small closed captioning, so who cares?
I did once. Everybody did once. But now, thanks to the left, the word is totally up for grabs.
Now, did you notice that Popper was writing about this in 1945? You think that there might be a reason? I think that was the year given, right? 1945. Do you think there might be a reason why people in the mid-1940s were thinking really hard about the nexus between democracy and free speech and intolerance? This idea that the intolerance of intolerance is new is a lie. It's an absolute lie. as we've seen.
Actually, it's worse than that. Tolerance now means the opposite of what it once meant. Tolerance now means intolerance, and intolerance now means tolerance.
Notice there are no citations for this. He's not quoting anyone in particular. He's just making things up right now and giving his opinion. So we'll see if he can actually bring some receipts. I'm going to guess no.
Confusing? Yeah, I know. But stay with me. There's a big payoff at the end. It's called clarity. To be tolerant today simply means you agree with politically correct, that is, left-wing positions.
Again, no citations. At all. This is such garbage. This is such garbage. It's such like if you wrote this as an essay and handed it to me, it would get a 0. This would not pass even an undergraduate, 1,000-word essay in terms of this approach. This is white guys' feels. White guys' feels. Oh, I can't be racist and sexist and homophobic and transphobic like I used to be. Back in the day when when men could, when white men, actually still in the day, but when white men could live unafraid of calling women sexist names and touching their bottoms and calling black men boys. Yeah, those are the good old tolerant days.
That's all it means. This is easy to show. Name one position that differs from the left that they don't label intolerant.
We're talking about a straw man argument. Name one person who actually does this. No, man, the onus is on you. You have the burden of proof here. You ask an audience member who has no ability whatsoever to actually give an example, and then you're just basically begging the question. Another logical fallacy. I feel like we need to, total up all the logical fallacies in these things and, for money and give to a charity or something.
When you differ with the left on any subject, and I mean any, the people who claim to be tolerant don't attack your position.
Again, where is any evidence of this? No names, the left, people, any position. This is all garbage. Wow, they're really scraping the bottom of the barrel. You can't even do a case study here. You can't name names. You're just gonna go the left. Ooh, just the commies and the feminists and all the, because they're not being intolerant of people right now by straw manning them and mischaracterizing them and giving them, false arguments.
They attack you. They label you, as Dennis Prager puts it, six-herb, sexist, intolerant, xenophobic, homophobic, Islamophobic, racist, bigoted.
Yeah, but are you? I mean, here's the question. When you say people disagree with you on the left and then they call you names, well, you're not putting in the case there that there are situations where people actually are bigoted and racist and Islamophobic. So it's actually a description. It's not a slur. But, of course, they want to be able to say whatever they want to say. But if you call them names, oh, my feelings. Oh, you called me a name. Oh, no, you called me the racist. Oh, my feels. But, other than your feels, you're not going to experience any discomfort from being called out on your racism. And if you can't explain how it's not racist, then it seems to me you should maybe think about what you said. But reflection in conservative Prager types.
And if that
Prager,
fails, there's always the ever-popular hater. This is...
Do these people live on Twitter? Do they ever have conversations that are not on Twitter? Honestly, what they're describing here is not reality. They're describing Twitter fights. Prager, not a you. Seriously, is this what your content is based off of? Your little Twitter wars? And faceless, egg accounts? Oh, man, this is such garbage.
Obviously not tolerance.
The shoe fits.
This is blatant intolerance.
Well, okay, they've not given a definition of tolerance. They've not given a definition of intolerance. They've not given a specific example of someone saying something that isn't intolerant being accused of intolerance. Who is this person? Who is this absolute whiny Greg Kooky? Is it Greg Kooky? Kukl. I wouldn't call him Kooky because he seems kooky. All right, so who is this guy? Does it say? President of Stand to Reason. Okay, so that doesn't seem like a qualification. That's a job title, it's not a qualification. Oh, historic Christianity. Oh, great. anti-abortion, the Gospels. We are at war with the powers of darkness in a spiritual battle where violence occurs in an unseen realm, but the casualties happen here in the visual world? What the hell? This is nutter. Ooh, that's a troll bot. James Dillon. This guy. Oh, okay. Somebody with 60 followers. Okay, so here we've got a guy who's trying to lecture us on being insulted, who thinks there's an imaginary war going on. What are his qualifications? Apparently none. He's not a philosopher. He's got an MA in philosophy of religion and ethics from the Talbot School of Theology, and an MA in Christian apologetics. Can you get an MA in making shit up? I guess so. From the Simon Greenleaf School of Law. What is this? A private school. It's part of the Trinity International. It's not accredited by the American Bar Association. This is why it's always entertaining to do the investigatory work behind these guys. Because, the unseen world, like D&D. Yeah, in his imagination. You know what? And nobody's really getting hurt in D&D either. Nobody's getting hurt in his imaginary world. So this guy has an MA in Christian apologetics from a law school that is not accredited by the Bar Association. It offers an online Masters of Legal Studies program. And then the Talbot School of Theology, which is a theological seminary. And, so basically he went to a private conservative college, and then a private conservative unaccredited law school program. He founded Stand to Reason, an organization dedicated to training those supporting his Christian viewpoints. So he's not qualified to talk about tolerance at all, really. He's not done any work, in terms of the philosophy of tolerance, from what I can see. He's not cited Popper, who we saw in terms of the ideas was seminal, one of the seminal thinkers on this topic. So I'm going to create SCU, Scratching Post University. Yes, or SPU. This guy is, so he's a Christian apologist with some phony degrees who is trying to claim that when he tells you, you're going to go to hell, he's doing it out of love. When you tell him, he's contributing to a patriarchal white supremacist system that is directly leading to the harm and deaths of people of color and women of color, white women and women of color, and non-binary people and trans people. He's going to tell you you're intolerant. So he wants toleration to tell you you're going to hell, but you can't talk back to him. This is white man's privilege. This is conservative white man's privilege.
Your accusers are guilty of doing exactly the same thing they're accusing you of doing.
No. If you're bigoted and someone tells you you're bigoted, they are not bigoted. They are describing a reality. It's completely different. Bigotry is a misrepresentation of a group based on a pre-existing bias, like what you're doing to the progressives and the lefts here. This whole video is slurring people. If he had evidence, that would be one thing. But right now, he's just making baseless accusations at an entire group of people out of fear and hatred. So that is actually like a bigotry. Whereas me pointing that out, that's not bigotry against him. I'm just describing the reality.
Here's what they're missing. In order to be genuinely tolerant of someone, you first have to disagree with them, since you don't tolerate people you agree with.
No. There's a lot of reasons to Oh, this is an interesting little piece of BS pretending to be psychology. Yes, in terms of tolerance, there's all kinds I could tolerate people who make noises with their mouth. I can tolerate people who take too long to drive away at a green light. The idea that tolerance can only narrowly be defined as this sort of like you have to allow for the existence of people. You don't tolerate people you agree with. You have to tolerate people you disagree with. So let's look at some definitions of tolerance here, because I am hesitant to call this an accurate. I might have to look at, I know we'll get dictionary definitions, but I think it might be more interesting. Yeah. The ability or willingness to tolerate the existence of opinions or behaviors that one dislikes or doesn't agree with. The capacity to endure continued subjugation to something, such as a drug or environmental conditions. That's a pretty narrow definition of tolerance. Let's see if we've got, do we got a wiki on tolerance? Because I feel like philosophically, tolerance is a far more encompassing, sophisticated topic than. Nope, it's mostly looks like it doesn't. How do you define tolerance? Willing to accept feelings, habits, or beliefs that are different from your own. Yeah. It doesn't have to be disagreement. This is what I want to get to. The ability to accept, experience, or survive something harmful or unpleasant. Yes. So narrowly defining tolerance is disagreement. If you only frame tolerance as putting up with things that you disagree with, that's a straw man, right? Tolerance has a wide scope, and it doesn't have to narrowly be defined as only those things with which you vehemently disagree, putting up with them. Right? By this logic, anyone who criticizes Nazis is being intolerant of Nazis. Okay. And maybe you are intolerant of Nazis. You can also criticize Nazism as a general idea. Anyway, so let's go on.
The classic definition of tolerance means to recognize and respect others' beliefs and practices without sharing them.
Where is a citation for that? Where is a citation for that? Where is a citation for that? As we've just seen, there's actually quite a lot of ways you can define intolerance. Willingness to accept feelings, habits, or beliefs that are different from your own. Just different. They don't have to be ones that you disagree with. Disagreement is not a necessary condition of tolerance. It's not even a sufficient condition of tolerance, right? Tolerance can be across a wide spectrum of ideas, beliefs, opinions, behaviors, and no, it's not, you don't have to respect, like, tolerance does not require showing respect to somebody, to a fascist. That's not in the definition. Like recognizing and respect others' beliefs and practices without a citation. I didn't see any of that. There's no. Tolerance has always been about like the putting up with, not accepting and respecting. This is how they get you. This is how they lie to you. This is how fascists want to keep doing fascism, is that they slide definitional conditions where none exist.
Notice the element of disagreement is key to tolerance.
But it's not, though. But it's not. It could be a habit. It could be a belief. Like, I don't have to disagree. Like, Catholics and Protestants might not disagree, like actively. They might not agree, but just not disagreeing doesn't mean that they don't like tolerate their Protestant friends. So anyway, this whole idea that you have to respect people even when you disagree with them is not part of tolerance.
Without it, true tolerance is not possible. This is critical. We don't tolerate people we agree with. We're on the same side.
There's a lot of... No, that's not true. I tolerate a lot of people on the left. I tolerate a lot of people. Like, very recently, I guess I'll just mention this. Vadim Newquist was being dragged by Peter Coffin because Vadim said he's going to vote for Biden. Now, the conclusions that Vadim reached on the Reid accusations in particular, which was what was at contention here, his conclusions that he was going to vote for Biden and my conclusion were the same. But how we got there was completely different. So, and we're on the same side. So actually, there are a lot of people that you tolerate in terms of differences that you are on the same side with. Again, these are all straw man arguments made by a guy who got a degree from a law school that isn't recognized by the Bar Association.
We only tolerate people we differ with, yet still choose to treat decently and with respect.
No, you don't actually have to be nice to people you tolerate. Like, you don't have to treat people with respect. It just means you put up with them. So if I had a plane ride next to somebody who was watching white supremacy content and putting up, white supremacy content, I wouldn't have to treat them with respect. And I wouldn't have to be decent to them. Not saying anything, actually, even making my own opinion known respectfully as to why I think they're wrong. That would be respect, but it doesn't have to be acknowledging them. So no, there's all kinds of things that he's putting around notions of tolerance that don't exist. But what they do function to do is to protect white supremacists from any criticism. And people who want patriarchy from any criticism. They are going to judge you, but they don't want to be judged by you.
This vital ingredient of real tolerance is completely missing in the politically correct version.
I want to, when you apply these standards to Candace Owen, does she show respect and tolerance to people who disagree with her? Does this guy? Does Prager? Can they live by the standards they set for the left?
Nowadays, if you differ with others on culturally sensitive issues like sexual orientation or religious beliefs, you're labeled intolerant no matter how you treat them.
Again, with these generalizations that have no basis in fact, no citation, no examples, no naming of names, that what they're really doing is actually being super intolerant of people on the left. They're actually doing the intolerance that they condemn. They're anyone who has a different opinion, they're demonizing them. They are not treating them with respect. They are not being decent to them. So their entire video about how to be tolerant, they're doing the opposite.
The left says all behaviors and ideas have equal value, that no behavior...
Again, the left. The left is not a thing that exists. That's like a conspiracy theory in your mind kind of thing. People. If you can't name a person, I don't want to, it doesn't matter to me. If you can't show me a named example that I can go and look into on my own, you're talking crap. It's garbage. Go away. And that's what this is.
Behavior or ideas any better than any other. They don't act that way. Tolerance is
There are definitely principles that are cohesive, that are conducive to a society, a successful society that require equality under law and equality in society to be enacted. And so those principles are superior to ones that create fear and harassment and violence and death, because that isn't the good of
one-way street for the left.
One-way street for the right is what they were. It's really, this is about their one-way street. This whole video is about their one-way street. They haven't come up with a single example yet, but this entire video is an
openly
example
declare
of
that sex differences are real, as Harry Potter novelist J.K. Rowling did, and see what happens.
Again, it's a straw man. It's not that that J.K. Rowling talked about sex differences being real.
He called transphobic by the left.
He's a liar.
The same thing happened to legendary tennis star and feminist Martina Navratilova when she said it was unfair to women to have to compete against trans athletes. That is, athletes who say they identify as female but are biologically male.
They always go after trans women too. This is big. So, but this is fine. When they're lying about what people say and they're misrepresenting the situations because they have right. God, these people are garbage.
But I thought, according to the left, all ideas have equal value.
He's not quoting anybody on the left who says that, you notice. He's just attributing it because he's a lying sack of crap, this guy. I really dislike this guy now. He's such a liar. I mean, he's a Christian apologist, so obviously. And he can't get into a real university, so obviously. But still, it's annoying.
So why are J.K. Rowling and Martina Navratilova...
They just love hiding behind, like people on the left without... with these little misrepresentations, no citation. Notice they just put in words, characterizations. They don't give a proper citation.
Suddenly called haters because the left doesn't believe its own rhetoric.
Oh, because you know what? This little white guy and his snowflake, it's such pain for him to be called a hater that he would rather live in a country where trans women are being murdered than to be called a name. That's really what they're complaining about here, is people calling them names on Twitter. That's what snowflakes. That's what Snowflake, this Muppet Greg, I'm calling you out, Greg. Yeah, come at me. You want to have a debate about tolerance? Let's talk about the intolerance of tolerance. You can come and meet somebody who has an actual degree from a real university that's accredited. How about that, Greg? Call me.
What the left has done is cleverly redefine tolerance.
That's what he's done. This is what he's done. He's cleverly redefined tolerance to include respect and show people dignity. He wants us to show respect for Nazis. He wants us to show respect to people who actually want to destroy the Constitution and, not call them traitors, not call them threats to our national security. That's where his tolerance
with
gets
leftist
us.
views. Tolerance no longer means treating people with civility and respect, even when we disagree with them.
He's not treating people with civility and respect in this video because he's lying about people up and down it.
It means not disagreeing with them. That is the left. That's how, in the name of tolerance, the left shuts down all disagreement.
Yes. Oh no, you poor little snowflake with your 1.5 million views having your disagreements shut down. Oh, poor little white man.
It defines any contradiction of leftist views as intolerant.
Leftist, leftism. And again, completely unsighted.
But not only is disagreement not intolerant, it's morally and logically essential. Think about it. All ideas, all behaviors are not
Disagreement, intolerance of bigotry is not just a difference of opinion. It's about an irrational hatred, mischaracter, like he's doing, of leftists, which dehumanize them and deny them their civil and human rights, so that you don't have to give them their rights. That's what he's saying. Is that basically we can dismiss all leftist ideas, all ideas from anyone on the left. And this is universally applicable to anybody who's left of me, that they're evil people and they're intolerant. Well, aren't you supposed to tolerate these evil, intolerant people by your own definition? But you're not showing tolerance to the left. You're showing intolerance to the people you're complaining are intolerant about actual bigotry.
Equally valid.
You guys
some
know.
are better,
You know.
some are worse. And discussion and disagreement and debate are how we sort out the good from the bad.
Yeah, you know what? We already had the discussion about fascism and white supremacy, and we decided they're bad. We decided that living in a society where people are in fear of their lives because members of the public will kill them for being who they are, not good. Right? You mean you wouldn't want to live in a society where Christians just got targeted by people and murdered for being Christians, right? You wouldn't want to tolerate that kind of society. And yet, you just transfer that to people who are trans or from other Jewish backgrounds who are targeted for hate crimes, all that kind of stuff.
Civilization
It is such low-level
depends on
philosophy. It's not
it.
even
The abolitionist
philosophy, you're
movement
right.
in America believed its arguments were better than pro-slavery arguments.
Yeah, but it wasn't arguments about slavery that determined the outcome, was it? People actually, like white supremacists, attacked the federal government because they wanted them to be human and act like humans and give other people their human rights. So, just let them go. Just let them go.
Anti-communists believed freedom was better than communism.
Yeah, communism doesn't go up against freedom. This is why you can't get into a real university, Greg. Greg, if you think that freedom is the economic alternative to communism, you really need to get your money back from that whatever mill degree that you pretend like you have an MA from, because this is not the binary here. Communism is an economic structure. You're going up against capitalism, and capitalism, as we know, kills people today, has many flaws. But, that would require you being tolerant of communist arguments and representing them fairly, which Greg can't do because he's actually as intolerant or more intolerant than the people he's complaining about.
It is. Tolerance doesn't require we treat all ideas as equally valuable. No, true tolerance means we treat all people as equally valuable.
And yet you're not showing that true tolerance to people on the left. You're strawmanning them, lying about them, and not providing any citations. So if you want to treat people on the left as equally valuable, yeah, you should take this video down. Because it's a complete, intolerant, angry, lying piece of propaganda. I mean, propaganda and lying is kind of redundant, but you get what I mean.
With kindness and with civility and with the freedom to...
Greg is very underwhelming. Greg is totally riding on the I'm an old white guy, listen to me kind of credibility claim here. It's not working out too well for Greg. He's used to a faith-based system where people just listen and believe. They don't go, I think you might be full of crap. I think Popper might have said, I think other smarter people have already thought about this and written about this, and other smarter people came after them who are still smarter than you have also written on this, and you aren't looking at any of the smart people. You're just talking about your own fifis. Anyway.
To express their ideas even when we disagree with them. That is real tolerance.
He wants to tolerate Hitler. By his logic, he's saying, yes, it's really important that we treat neo-Nazis with respect and nice, and we should give them a place at the table. They have a place in our democracy. They're human beings with ideas that we need to respect and value, not shun to the side and acknowledge our threats to our democratic way of life, and could actually end up destroying the very thing that you say here that you value and you want to protect. He's not doing the paradox of intolerance at all. Have you noticed that? He hasn't talked about how some of these ideas are so dangerous that if they were allowed to run on rampant, like Trump is doing right now, he's literally turning our state into a fascist state. He's claiming more executive authorities. He's operating with illegally, knowing that it's going to take longer to catch him and prosecute him than it is for him to just do what he wants. And what you're saying is that we have to tolerate that to the point where, we just have a government run by Trump and we've lost our democracy? At what point did our tolerance actually become our downfall? We lost our ability to be a tolerant society by tolerating this kind of fascist nonsense. But that danger is never brought up. You know why? Because white Greg here, patriarchal beneficiary Greg here, self-righteous Christian with a subpar education here, he thinks that he's the one who really needs to be protected. And he's going to be protected in a fascist state. He's going to do okay in Richard Spencer's America. Well, not America so much as the white supremacist ethno-state he wants to set up. So of course he's not concerned. And he's happy to allow Nazis to get away with it because he's not the one who's going to get killed by Proud Boys or beat up by Proud Boys walking down the street one day.
Boston College philosophy professor Peter Craft.
Oh my gosh! Oh my God! We actually have a quote, a cherry-picked quote here. So he's not quoting Popper. All right, so let's see what this guy says. Oh, he doesn't tolerate abortion. Absolutely does not tolerate abortion, I'm sure.
He says be egalitarian about people. That is, treat all people with equal dignity and respect, regardless of their views. But, he says, be elitist about ideas. In other words, treat some ideas as better than other ideas. Why? Because they are.
So he's basically saying you have to treat a neo-Nazi advocating for forcible removal of all non-white Americans from American territory. You have to be as nice to them as to MLK. You have to treat them as being absolutely the same. So what you're saying is you're elevating fascism to be the same as nonviolent civil disobedience in order to gain human rights. This is what it really is about. They just want to be treated as if their noxious, intolerant views should be as seriously entertained and considered. This is what annoys Sargon when I come on and talk with him or whenever we interact. I have no respect for his views because they're ridiculous. And he wants, to be treated nicely, and he wants to be taken seriously as if his declared Islamophobia is somehow worthy of respect. And it's just not. It's just not, because it's going to lead to a society where people live in fear and violence and danger, which is contravening directly the aims of having a civil government. So just know, you're wrong. You're wrong.
Some are good, some are bad, some are smart, some are dumb, some are dangerous. And we ought to be able to have the liberty to figure out which is which in our discussions.
So what you need to do is, when you have Nazis chanting, "Jews will not replace us," remember, be polite when you ask them not to kill people, because those Nazis are human beings, according to Greg.
Without being called names. And
no, don't call them names when they're chanting blood and soil and Jews will not replace us. Don't call them names. You're going to hurt their feelings. Those poor little Nazis Greg is probably very good friends with.
We'll lose our jobs or our careers.
Oh yeah, you wouldn't want a person who's openly advocating for white supremacy to have their employer find out that that's what their employee is doing and associated with their business, and have that employer disassociate from them. No. It's really super important that we protect Nazis, Greg, isn't it? It's really super important there are no social consequences for calling for, the violent deportation of Americans, denying them their rights. We wouldn't want to make those people feel bad, would we?
True tolerance applies to how we treat people we disagree with, not how we treat ideas we disagree with.
And he's been going after leftist people this entire video. So, hypocrite?
All people have equal value.
Except for the leftists that he's talking about, who are, just mindlessly attacking and calling names. Those people, you don't have to show them respect.
All points of view do not.
Yeah, so be respectful to people who hate. Be respectful to Dylan Roof. Be respectful to mass murderers. They just have different ideas, people, according to Greg.
I'm Greg Kokel, president of Stand to Reason.
Yeah, you can't reason for crap, Greg. You need to sit down and shut up. Instead of being Stand to Reason, why don't you call it, I sit down and shut up, because my ignorant mouth, I'm too arrogant. I think I know a lot more than I do. Oh, wow. The preciousness of older white guys. Oh, to have the confidence of a mediocre white man, I think the phrase goes. Those stickmen need to stop groping each other. Yes, I think that's what we need. No context. No context, PragerU. Smart, dumb, dangerous, good, bad. Holding hands. That's what we need in life. Yeah, so PragerU. Out defending Nazis since whenever. Out defending fascist and violent rhetoric since whenever. Come talk to Greg, who has no qualifications and had to go to a school without accreditation because he couldn't get anywhere else. All right, so. Yeah, exactly. Saying, people who, like Milo was saying, certain kids who are teenagers are capable of making decisions about having something as serious as sex. You're supposed to, according to Greg, you just tolerate Milo no matter what he does. But Greg won't tolerate people who are he perceives as being left just saying things on Twitter. You can't say mean things about me. It's fine to call for the murder of people, according to Greg, but don't call him a name, because that hurts his feelings. Oh no, don't call me a hater. Don't call me a hater. It's not even, the school. The fraud. I'm really glad that they got their lawsuits kicked out of court, trying to pretend like they make monetizable content that's worth watching. All right, guys. Well, like I said, I'm going to get going here. I've got a meeting, business meeting, actually, in 50 minutes, so I'm going to leave the show a little bit early and go prep for that. Have a bit of a relax, and I will be back here at 6 o'clock with my patrons and with the Kev, if he does show up, and we'll see how that goes. And I guess then all that's left to be said, you guys, is thank you for stopping by. Thanks for sticking with me for an hour and almost 50 minutes, hour 45, and I will see you in a few hours. So until next time, guys, I've been Christy. You've been awesome people in the chat. Thank you for stopping by, all of you. The Lucky Wanderer, DNF fan, Linda, GA, Natalie, Po Mama Sid, Flint, I saw, Rory Katz, I saw in the chat, lots of people. Tony, hello, you stopping by as well. Thank you so much for popping in, and I'll see you again in a few hours. So, yeah, as I said, goodbye for me. I've been Christy. You've been awesome, and we'll see each other soon. Bye.